I'm Alara, 30 years old, and I was standing in the center of my mother's 60th birthday party when the police walked in. Every head turned. My mother's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. My father went pale. But my brother Gavin, he knew exactly why they were there. Let me back up 6 months to when my entire world collapsed. The mortgage broker's expression changed from friendly to confused in seconds. "I'm sorry, Miss Chen, but your application has been denied." I stared at her across the desk, my 7-year-old son Reese coloring quietly in the waiting area behind me. Denied? That doesn't make sense. I have excellent credit. She turned her computer screen slightly. According to this, you have a credit score of 487 and over $52,000 in outstanding debt across multiple accounts. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. I don't have any debt except my car payment. It says here you have 3 credit cards maxed out, 2 personal loans in default, and a line of credit that's been sent to collections. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and logged into my credit monitoring app. The screen loaded, and I felt the room tilt. There they were, accounts I'd never opened, debts I'd never incurred. My entire financial life had been destroyed, and I had no idea how. The broker slid a printed report across the desk. "You should contact these creditors immediately. This could be identity theft." Identity theft. The words echoed in my head as I gathered my things and collected Reese. Someone had stolen my identity, opened accounts in my name, maxed them out, and disappeared. But who would do that? Who had access to my social security number, my birth date, all my personal information? Then I saw it. The address listed on one of the fraudulent accounts. 2847 Riverside Drive, apartment 12B. My brother Gavin's apartment. I drove straight to Gavin's place, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. Reese asked if we could get ice cream. Oblivious to the storm building inside me, I promised him later, my voice barely steady. Gavin answered the door in his usual way, grinning like nothing in the world could touch him. At 27, he'd never held a job longer than 8 months. Our parents always bailed him out. "Alara, what a surprise! Come in, come in." I stayed in the doorway. "We need to talk. Now." His smile faltered. "About what?" "About the $52,000 in debt opened in my name. About the accounts using your address. About how you destroyed my credit score." The color drained from his face. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, Gavin. The evidence is right here." I shoved the credit report at him. He barely glanced at it. "Look, someone must have stolen both our identities. This happened to me last year, remember? Someone used my information too. Stop it. Just stop. Your address is on 3 of these accounts. That doesn't mean anything. Identity thieves are clever. They probably used my address to throw people off." I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to cry in front of him. "Gavin, please, just tell me the truth. I need to fix this. I have a son to take care of." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Alara, even if something did happen, you can't go to the police. Think about Mom. This would destroy her. Can't we just handle this privately? I'll pay you back, I swear. Pay me back with what money? You're 3 months behind on your own rent." His face hardened. "Fine, talk to Mom and Dad then, but don't bring the cops into this. Please." That evening, I sat across from my parents in their pristine living room. My mother, Helen, perched on the edge of her chair like she was posing for a photograph. My father, Arthur, stood by the fireplace, arms crossed. I'd laid out all the evidence on their coffee table. Bank statements, credit reports, account applications. Everything pointed to Gavin. "This is clearly identity theft," I said. "Gavin used my information to open these accounts. I need your support when I file a police report." Arthur picked up one of the documents, barely glancing at it. "Did you leave your information unsecured? Your social security card lying around?" I blinked. "What? No. I keep everything locked in a safe." "Then how did he supposedly get access?" Helen asked, her tone already defensive. "He's been in my apartment dozens of times. He could have found my information when I was at work. Or, so you're admitting you left it where he could find it," Arthur interrupted. "That's negligence on your part, Alara." My mouth fell open. Are you seriously blaming me for being robbed? Helen leaned forward. We're not blaming you, dear. We're just saying that family handles these matters privately. Going to the police would destroy Gavin's future. He'd never recover from a criminal record. What about my future? What about Reese's future? I can't buy a house, I can't get loans, my credit is destroyed. Arthur pulled out a folder from his desk drawer. He'd been prepared for this conversation. Inside was a pre-written, notarized loan agreement. We've worked out a solution, he said. You'll pay half the debt to settle this quietly. We'll loan you the money at a reasonable interest rate. Everyone moves forward. I stared at the document. You want me to pay for Gavin's theft? We want you to take responsibility for your role in this situation, Helen said. If you'd been more careful with your information, this wouldn't have happened. 2 weeks later, everything fell apart. My apartment building manager called me at work. The background check they ran for my lease renewal had flagged my credit issues. They were declining to renew. I had 30 days to find a new place. I spent every evening apartment hunting, Reese trailing behind me as we looked at smaller and smaller places. Everything in my price range was in terrible neighborhoods or too small, or required a credit score I no longer had. Finally, I found a tiny 2-bedroom in a decent area. The landlord, an older woman who reminded me of my grandmother, agreed to overlook my credit after I explained the identity theft situation and showed her my police report. Yes, I'd filed one despite my parents' protests. Moving day was brutal. Reese stood in the backyard of our old place, staring at his swing set, his favorite spot in the whole world. Can we bring it, Mommy? I looked at the tiny concrete patio of our new apartment. There's no room, sweetie. I'm sorry. His face crumpled. But I love my swings. I knelt down and hugged him. I know. I'm so sorry. As I held my crying son, something inside me hardened. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about Gavin taking Reese's childhood, his security, his home. My brother had stolen from a 7-year-old child, and my parents were protecting him. They were all going to pay for this. My friend Kira had been texting me for weeks, asking how she could help. Kira worked as a cybersecurity lawyer, and she'd been furious when I told her what happened. We met at a coffee shop near her office. I brought my laptop and every document I'd collected. I want to build an airtight case, I told her. I'm a data analyst. I know how to track patterns, follow digital trails. I need your legal expertise to make sure everything I find is admissible. Kira grinned. Finally. I was wondering when you'd stop being nice about this. For the next 3 hours, we mapped out my strategy. I would use my professional skills to trace every fraudulent transaction, every account opening, every digital footprint. Kira would ensure everything was documented properly for court. I started that night. Reese was asleep, and I sat at my kitchen table, my laptop glowing in the dark. I pulled up spreadsheets, cross-referenced dates and amounts, tracked IP addresses from account logins. And then I found it. One of the fraudulent payments, a $8,000 transfer, hadn't gone to pay off Gavin's rent or credit cards. It had gone directly to a loan account. I dug deeper, accessing public records. The loan was co-signed by Arthur Chen, my father. 3 years ago, Dad had co-signed a $15,000 personal loan for Gavin. Gavin had defaulted, and my stolen identity had been used to pay it off, protecting both Gavin and my father's credit. My father had known. He'd benefited from the theft, and now he was trying to make me pay for it. I saved everything, backed it up in 3 places, and sent Kira an encrypted file. Then I smiled for the first time in weeks. I had them. Arthur called me the next morning. Let's meet for coffee. We need to talk. I knew this was coming. He'd probably realized I wasn't backing down. We met at a cafe downtown. He ordered black coffee and got straight to business, sliding a certified check across the table, $5,000. Take this. Drop the investigation. We'll call it even. I looked at the check but didn't touch it. Even? This doesn't even cover 10% of what Gavin stole. It's a gesture of goodwill. Take it and move on. This crusade you're on is causing emotional distress to your mother. She's not sleeping. She's not eating. Maybe she should have thought about that before enabling a criminal. Arthur's jaw tightened. Watch your tone. I'm trying to help you. Help me? You co-signed a loan that Gavin paid off with my stolen money. You knew about this, didn't you? That's why you're so desperate for me to drop it. His face went carefully blank. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and showed him the transaction records. This payment, $8,000 from an account in my name, going directly to your co-signed loan. You directly benefited from his theft. Silence, then, you can't prove that. Actually, I can. I'm a data analyst, Dad. This is literally what I do for a living. I stood up, leaving his check on the table. I won't be taking your money. If I did, it would make me complicit in concealing a crime. You should know better than to offer. I handed him a formal cease and desist letter Kira had drafted. Stop contacting me. All communication goes through my attorney now. The attack came from a direction I didn't expect. My work. My manager, Mr. Sterling, called me into his office on a Wednesday morning. His expression was serious. Alara, I need to ask you about something. HR received an anonymous complaint that you've been using your work computer to access personal financial records during business hours. Is this true? My heart sank. Gavin, he'd found a new way to hurt me. I used my computer after hours to investigate identity theft, my own identity theft. I can show you the timestamps. Everything was done outside my scheduled work time. Mr. Sterling pulled up something on his computer. The complaint says you accessed confidential banking information that wasn't related to company business. That's a violation of our IT policy. I was tracking fraudulent. Accounts opened in my name. I wasn't hacking. I was accessing my own credit reports and bank statements. Can you prove that? I pulled out my phone. I have everything documented. Timestamps, screenshots, police report numbers. I've been building a legal case against my brother for identity theft. Everything I accessed was either public record or my own personal information. Mr. Sterling sat back, studying me. Your brother filed this complaint? Almost certainly. He's trying to discredit me before this goes to court. Walk me through what you found. For the next hour, I showed him everything. My data analysis, the transaction trails, the pattern recognition that proved systematic fraud. Mr. Sterling had a background in forensic accounting before moving into management. He understood exactly what he was looking at. Finally, he nodded. This is impressive work. The methodology is sound. I'm dismissing the HR complaint, but I want you to be careful. If your brother is willing to sabotage your employment, he might escalate further. I know, but I can't stop now, not after what he's done to me and my son. Mr. Sterling was quiet for a moment. If you need to use company resources for your investigation during approved personal time, you have my permission. Document everything. And Alara, win this case. That night, I organized everything into a comprehensive digital vault. Every transaction, every piece of evidence, every communication. I created redundant backups stored in different locations, cloud storage, external drives, even printed copies in a safe deposit box. Kira reviewed everything and declared it bulletproof. This is better than most cases I've seen from actual investigators, she said. You've proven systematic identity theft with clear intent and benefit. The connection to your father's loan is particularly damaging. That shows premeditation and conspiracy. What happens next? We file criminal charges formally. Then we file a civil suit for damages, including emotional distress, financial losses, and the cost of credit repair. We're going to get you every penny back, plus punitive damages. And my parents? If your father was knowingly involved, he could face charges as an accessory. At minimum, he'll be exposed in court. I thought about Helen's 60th birthday party coming up in 4 months. She'd been planning it for over a year. A huge celebration at an expensive venue, all their friends and family invited. She'd been posting about it constantly on social media. Kira, is there any way we can time this so everything comes to light around late September? She raised an eyebrow. Your mother's party? They used every family gathering my whole life to humiliate me, called me too sensitive, said I was useless, made sure everyone knew Gavin was their golden child. I want them to know what it feels like when everyone's watching. Kira smiled slowly. I can work with that timeline. We'll file everything now, but request a preliminary hearing date that falls right around then. The media attention alone will be significant once the court documents become public record. I had all the data, every piece of evidence, every proof of their betrayal. The next move was theirs. But they had no moves left. Helen called me crying 2 days after I filed the criminal complaint. How could you do this to your brother? To this family? How could he steal from me? How could Dad help him cover it up? Your father didn't help anyone cover anything up. You're being paranoid and vindictive. I'd expected the denial. Mom, I have the transaction records, the loan payment, everything. I don't care what you think you have. You're tearing this family apart over money. Money, Elara. Is that really what matters to you? It matters when that money was meant for Reese's education fund. It matters when I can't provide a stable home for my son because my credit is destroyed. But you never cared about Reese, did you? He's not Gavin's son, so he doesn't matter. She sucked in a sharp breath. That's a horrible thing to say. It's the truth. You've seen Reese maybe 6 times in the past year. But Gavin shows up for Sunday dinner, and you act like the prodigal son returned. Gavin needs more support. He's had a harder time. Harder than being a single mother working full-time while raising a child alone? Harder than having your entire identity stolen by your own brother? Silence. Then, if you go through with this, you're no longer part of this family. Good. I stopped being part of this family the moment you chose to protect my abuser over protecting your grandson. I hung up before she could respond. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for September 28th, 3 days after Helen's birthday party. The timing was perfect. Gavin's lawyer tried to get the charges dropped, arguing insufficient evidence. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Miss Rodriguez, had laughed at the motion. We have banking records, digital trails, documented financial benefit, and forensic analysis. This is one of the strongest identity theft cases I've handled. Gavin's next move was predictable. He tried to negotiate a plea deal that would avoid prison time. Miss Rodriguez refused. This case was too clean, too documented. She wanted the full conviction. Meanwhile, I continued living my life. Work, taking care of Reese, rebuilding slowly. I'd started credit repair services, disputing every fraudulent account. It would take years to fully recover, but I was making progress. Reese was doing better too. He'd made friends at his new school. The smaller apartment meant we were actually closer to his classroom, so he could walk with neighborhood kids. Silver linings. But I was waiting. Waiting for September, waiting for everything to become public, waiting for the moment my parents would have to face what they'd protected. In August, Helen sent out the invitations for her party. Formal, engraved cards with gold trim. 200 guests. A string quartet. Catered dinner. Open bar. She was sparing no expense. I received an invitation too. She'd probably sent it before our last conversation, and no one bothered to uninvite me. The card sat on my counter for a week before I responded. I checked attending and mailed it back. Kira thought I was insane. Why would you go? They'll just make a scene. Because I want to be there when everything falls apart. I want to see their faces when people start asking questions about the criminal charges. The hearing is 3 days after the party. The court documents won't be public yet. I smiled. But the media might get a tip about an interesting case involving identity theft and family fraud. Just before the party, these things happen. Kira laughed. You're terrifying. I love it. I'd already drafted an anonymous tip to 3 local reporters who covered white-collar crime. It included enough details to make them curious, without revealing my identity as the source. They'd pull the court records, see the names, and start making calls. The story would break 2 days before the party, right when Helen would be doing final preparations. The first article dropped on September 23rd. Local family implicated in identity theft case. Son accused of stealing $52,000 from sister. The reporter had done her homework. She'd interviewed the prosecutor, pulled public records, even found the connection to Arthur's co-signed loan. The article didn't say Arthur was complicit, but it raised questions. According to court documents, some of the stolen funds were used to pay off a personal loan co-signed by the defendant's father, raising questions about whether other family members were aware of the theft. My phone exploded with texts from extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles, all asking if the article was true. I responded to no one. Helen called me 16 times. I let every call go to voicemail. The second article came out the next day. This one interviewed identity theft experts who called my case one of the most brazen examples of familial financial abuse they'd seen. They discussed how family members were often the perpetrators of identity theft because they had easy access to personal information. The third article, published the morning of Helen's party, was the worst. Parents allegedly pressured victim to drop charges against brother. Someone had leaked my cease and desist letter to Arthur. The reporter printed excerpts. My father's attempt to pay me off. The accusations of trying to silence me to protect Gavin. It was devastating, and it was everywhere. Local news sites, social media, crime blogs. By noon, number Justice for Alara was trending locally. I dressed carefully for the party. Simple black dress, understated jewelry. I wanted to blend in, to watch without being the center of attention. The venue was beautiful. Riverside Country Club, overlooking the water. White linen tablecloths, elaborate floral centerpieces, soft lighting. Helen had outdone herself. But the atmosphere was wrong. Instead of celebration, there was tension. Groups of guests huddled together, whispering. I caught fragments of conversations as I passed. Did you see the articles? I can't believe they invited her. Poor Helen, this must be mortifying. I found my assigned table in the back corner. Apparently, I'd been relegated to the kids' table, literally seated with cousins under 16. Perfect. I could observe everything from here. Helen looked brittle. She smiled and greeted guests, but her eyes were panicked. She kept glancing at the entrance like she was expecting someone unwanted to arrive. Arthur stood next to her, his expression carved from stone. He wasn't even pretending to smile. And Gavin? Gavin was drunk. I could tell from across the room. He was leaning heavily on a table, his face flushed, gesturing wildly to anyone who would listen. The dinner proceeded awkwardly. People made toasts to Helen, carefully, avoiding any mention of family or children. One aunt started to say something about Helen's beautiful family and then stopped mid-sentence, going red. I ate my salmon quietly and waited. At 8:47 p.m., Detective Sarah Chen arrived. I'd met her weeks ago during the investigation. She was the lead on Gavin's case. She walked straight to the family table where Helen, Arthur, and Gavin were sitting. The room went silent. Every head turned. I'm sorry to interrupt, Detective Chen said, her voice carrying across the room. But I need to speak with Gavin Chen. Now? Helen stood up, nearly knocking over her wine glass. This is a private event. Can't this wait until tomorrow? No, ma'am, it cannot. Gavin pushed back from the table. I'm not saying anything without my lawyer. That's your right, but you need to come with me. There's been a development in your case. What development? Arthur demanded. Detective Chen turned to him, and I saw a flicker of something in her expression. Contempt. We've discovered additional fraudulent accounts. Mr. Chen has apparently been doing this to multiple family members, not just his sister. The charges are being upgraded to include wire fraud and conspiracy. Multiple family members. I hadn't known that. But now, watching Gavin's face go pale, I realized it was true. He hadn't just stolen from me, he'd stolen from others too. Helen sank back into her chair, her hand pressed to her chest. Chaos erupted. Guests started pulling out their phones, filming, whispering loudly. Someone's grandmother stood up and announced, I always knew that boy was trouble. Gavin started shouting. This is harassment. You're doing this to humiliate my mother on her birthday. No, Mr. Chen, Detective Chen said calmly. I'm doing this because 3 more victims came forward this week after reading about your sister's case. Apparently, stealing from family is a pattern for you. She handed him a document. This is a warrant for your arrest. You, Wade, can come voluntarily now, or I can arrest you in front of all these people. Your choice. The room held its breath. Gavin looked at Arthur, at Helen, at the 200 guests watching him. Then he looked at me. Our eyes met across the room. He saw me sitting there, calm and composed, and understanding dawned on his face. I'd known this was coming. I'd planned for this. You! He spat, pointing at me. You did this. You set this up. I documented your crimes. I replied, my voice steady. You did this to yourself. He lunged toward me, but Detective Chen and 2 uniformed officers who'd appeared in the doorway blocked him. They put him in handcuffs right there in the middle of the dance floor. Helen was sobbing now, her perfect makeup streaming down her face. Arthur stood frozen, watching his son being arrested at his wife's birthday party. Detective Chen paused on her way out. She looked at Arthur directly. "Mr. Chen, we'll need you to come to the station tomorrow morning to answer questions about your co-signed loan and your knowledge of the fraudulent payments." Arthur's face went gray. "I don't know what you're talking about. Your daughter's forensic analysis suggests otherwise. Bring your lawyer." And then they were gone. Gavin, the officers, Detective Chen, leaving behind a room full of shocked guests and two parents whose perfect facade had just shattered. People started leaving quickly. No one wanted to stay for cake. I watched Helen's $15,000 custom birthday cake sit untouched as guests made awkward excuses and headed for the exits. I stood up to leave too. As I passed the family table, Helen grabbed my wrist. "Are you happy now?" she hissed. "You destroyed your brother's life. You humiliated us in front of everyone we know." I looked down at her hand on my wrist, then at her tear-stained face. Gavin destroyed his own life when he committed multiple felonies. You destroyed your reputation when you chose to protect a criminal instead of his victims. I just made sure everyone knew the truth. He's your brother, and I'm your daughter. But you never treated me like I mattered. Reese never mattered. Only Gavin mattered. So yes, Mom, I'm happy. I'm happy that for once in my life, the golden child is facing consequences. I pulled my wrist free and walked out. Behind me, I heard Helen collapse into Arthur's arms, wailing. The preliminary hearing 3 days later was anticlimactic after the drama of the party. Gavin pleaded not guilty, but his lawyer looked defeated. The prosecutor presented the evidence, my data analysis, the multiple victims, the clear pattern of behavior. The judge ordered Gavin held on $100,000 bail. Arthur tried to post it, but Helen stopped him. "No," she said, her voice broken. "No more. I can't do this anymore." It was the first time I'd ever heard her deny Gavin anything. Arthur argued with her in the courthouse hallway, their voices carrying. "He's our son. We can't leave him in jail. We don't have the money, Arthur. The party, the lawyers, everything. We don't have it. Then we'll take out a loan." "With what collateral? Our house? Our retirement? No, I'm done sacrificing everything for him. Look what it cost us. Look what we lost." She was crying again, but this time, I didn't feel any sympathy. The trial was scheduled for November. In the meantime, I focused on rebuilding my life. The media attention had been intense, but it was shifting in my direction. Articles about my data analysis skills, about how I'd built an airtight case as a victim. A cybersecurity firm offered me a job as a forensic analyst with a significant pay increase. I accepted. The work was fascinating, and I was good at it. Mr. Sterling had been right. My skills were my greatest weapon. Reese was thriving. He'd gotten involved in a coding club at school, showing the same analytical mind I had. He asked questions about my work, about computers, about how data could tell stories. I never told him what Gavin had done. Not the details, just that Uncle Gavin had made bad choices, and sometimes people had to face consequences. He accepted that with the simple logic of childhood. Meanwhile, my parents were falling apart. Arthur was being investigated by the State Bar Association. Someone had reported his involvement in the loan payment, suggesting he'd violated ethical standards. He was on administrative leave from his law firm pending the investigation. Helen had withdrawn completely from social life. She'd resigned from her charity boards, canceled her club memberships. The shame was too much. Extended family members reached out to me with apologies. Cousins who'd witnessed years of favoritism finally acknowledged it. Aunts who'd stayed silent admitted they'd known Gavin was trouble. One cousin, Marcus, told me that Gavin had stolen from him too. $3,000 from a joint business venture that disappeared. He'd never reported it because Helen had begged him not to press charges. "I should have. Stood up for you," Marcus said. "I'm sorry." I accepted his apology but told him what I'd learned. Apologies don't undo damage, but actions do. If you want to make it right, testify at the trial. Tell them about the pattern of theft. He agreed. By the time November arrived, there were 5 additional victims willing to testify. Gavin wasn't just facing charges for stealing from me, he was facing charges for systematic fraud against multiple people over several years. The trial lasted 3 days. The prosecutor was brilliant, methodical, and merciless. She walked the jury through every piece of evidence. My data analysis was presented by an expert witness who explained how thorough and professional it was. "This is forensic-level investigation work," he testified. Ms. Chen identified patterns, traced digital footprints, and created a comprehensive timeline that proves systematic fraud. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was calculated, repeated theft from multiple victims. Gavin's lawyer tried to argue that Gavin was mentally unwell, that he had addiction issues, that he needed help, not prison. The jury looked unmoved. When I took the stand, the prosecutor asked me to describe the impact of the theft. "I lost my home," I said. "My son lost his sense of security. We had to move to a smaller apartment. I couldn't buy a house for my child because my credit was destroyed. But worse than the financial impact was the betrayal. My parents chose to protect my abuser instead of protecting me and my son. That's damage that goes beyond money." I saw several jurors nodding. Gavin never took the stand. His lawyer knew he'd crumble under cross-examination. The verdict came back in 45 minutes. Guilty on all counts: wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit fraud. Gavin's face crumpled. Helen sobbed loudly in the gallery. Arthur sat motionless. The judge scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later. Gavin was remanded into custody immediately. As the Rackley bailiffs led him away, he turned and looked at me one last time. "I'm sorry," he mouthed. I didn't respond. Sorry wasn't enough. Sorry didn't fix anything. Sorry was just another word he'd learned too late. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded me. I gave one statement, carefully prepared with Kira's help. Justice was served today. Not just for me, but for every victim of familial financial abuse who's been told to stay quiet to protect family reputation. Silence protects abusers. Truth protects victims. I chose truth. The statement went viral. Within hours, Choose Truth was trending. Other victims of family fraud started sharing their stories. Sentencing day arrived. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s who'd seen countless cases of fraud. "Mr. Chen," she said, looking at Gavin over her reading glasses, "you systematically stole from family members who trusted you. You showed no remorse until you were caught. You attempted to silence your sister through intimidation. And when confronted with evidence, you tried to discredit her employment and reputation." She paused. "These crimes required planning, deception, and a callous disregard for the people who loved you. I see no mitigating factors that warrant leniency. I sentence you to 7 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. You will pay full restitution to all victims, including interest and legal fees. You will not profit from this story in any way. No book deals, no media appearances, nothing. 7 years. Gavin would be 34 when he got out. His 20s, gone. Helen collapsed in the gallery. Arthur helped her out while she wailed. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No joy. Just a quiet sense of completion. The civil suit was settled out of court. Gavin had no assets, but Arthur did. My lawyer argued that Arthur's co-signed loan made him financially liable for damages. Arthur settled for $85,000, the exact amount of my credit damage plus legal fees. He had to take out a loan against his house to pay it. I put the money directly into a trust for Reese's education, the same fund that Gavin had stolen from. Helen called me one more time after the settlement. "You took everything from us." "No, Mom. Gavin took everything. You and Dad just refused to see it until it was too late. Can't you understand we were trying to protect our son?" "I understand perfectly. You protected the wrong child, and now we all have to live with that choice." I hung up and blocked her number. Blocked Arthur's too. I was done with them. A year later, my life looked completely different. I'd been promoted at the cybersecurity firm. Reese was thriving in 3rd grade. We'd moved to a bigger apartment, not as big as our original place, but comfortable. My credit score had climbed to 720. I was approved for a mortgage. A real house this time, with a backyard big enough for a swing set. Reese's face when he saw it was worth every struggle. "Really, Mom? A real swing set?" "Really," I said, hugging him tight. "We're home. I'd built a new family too." Kira and her husband became regular dinner guests. Marcus and several cousins reached out, genuine and supportive. We celebrated birthdays and holidays together, creating new traditions that didn't involve golden children and scapegoats. I heard through the family grapevine that Helen and Arthur had divorced. The stress of the trial, the financial burden, the social exile their marriage hadn't survived. Helen moved to Arizona to live with her sister. Arthur stayed in town.